I've been slightly unfair on Inner Armour that in both times they've presented to us, I've not given them very much time to present, and therefore it's been a sort of potted version. But actually, I think what you've done very well is take what is obviously a very complicated and scientific, not approach, but it is a science, and conveyed it in layman's terms, in clear terms, without dumbing it down. And actually, you know, tremendous credit to you, because that's no easy thing to do. You know, the proof of the pudding is that you presented to the common room here earlier, or at the start of term, and we've got a good number of people have willingly signed up and volunteered to take part in the training courses. You know, if it had been boring, teachers are no different than children. They switch off very quickly if they're bored. And I would say, you know, the very fact that so many spoke positively and came up at the end to sign up and express an interest is really encouraging and very positive. And what's good from my point of view is it has you know, we have put a lot of emphasis on staff well-being in the last couple of years, and focused on that and tried to get people talking about that and getting away from this idea that in any way it's a sign of weakness. And actually you coming in and talking to the staff has helped open that up to an even greater extent, and that can only be a good thing. From what I've seen of it thus far, it's more realistic, it's perhaps a little bit more gritty, it doesn't have the happiness bit in the title, and you know, I don't want to scoff at that, but I think that's important. I think some of people's concern about sort of well-being and what have you, it stumbles, that they struggle to get over this idea of, well, it's just about happiness training. And then I think this idea that it's gritty and realistic and focusing a lot on resilience is very important, and not giving the impression that resilience or that problems are not going to occur, or that somehow you can just be happy all the time. You know, frankly, being miserable sometimes is part of life. It's certainly part of being a teenager. And I think, you know, that's important. I think that developing resilience and being realistic and focusing on resilience and understanding that things will not always go your way is really important. It doesn't matter actually whether you're talking about a school, a military unit, or a business. You're talking about organisations that are populated by human beings, and what motivates human beings, what binds human beings together, I think are the same in any organisation. That sense of belonging, that common purpose, a common purpose that you as an individual thinks is valuable and worth getting out of bed for in the morning, the collaboration and the collegiality with your colleagues, and the sense of being part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's a really important bit. And I guess actually coming back to your question about the military, that idea, that understanding that you are a very important component, but there are lots of very important components, and that you are contributing to a bigger purpose, particularly in this somewhat narcissistic age. I think that's very important indeed. And so actually in any school, what you need is an authentic, meaningful core purpose that to an extent binds everybody together and gives meaning to the work of everybody. Whether you are in a school marking out the lines on a pitch, peeling potatoes in the kitchen, teaching a physics lesson, taking a trip overseas, or sitting in this chair as the head. You know, it gives meaning to the work of everybody, and that in any organisation, to my mind, is very important. 3 years ago, we took part in an ITV documentary which involved me and 3 of my pupils spending a week at a state school in Derby, and then my opposite number there and 3 of her pupils came here. And I made it very clear in that television documentary that I think that greater collaboration between the independent and state sector is very much what we should all be doing. And I'm not alone in that. I would say almost every independent head I've met in the last 5 years has said the same thing. Look, you know, as I said, we were on BBC Breakfast, and I said there, we live on a small island. We're not worlds apart. We all believe in children. We all believe in educating children. And children are children. The context of their lives may be slightly different from place to place, but broadly speaking, we're talking about believing children, getting the best out of children, and doing the best for children. And therefore, the more collaboration there is, the more exchange and the cross-pollination of ideas, good practice, the better. I did an undergraduate degree, a history undergraduate degree, went to Sandhurst to train as an army officer, and then spent 8 years as an infantry officer in the British Army. And as part of that, this was very much the army of the 1990s, so three tours of South Armagh, Belfast and Bosnia during the war. And in terms of, if someone had said to me at the time, how is psychological health relevant, I would have looked at them blankly. Because first of all, no one was really talking about that. Second of all, that was never raised in our training, and I'm not sure I would have been aware that was something that I was drawing on. But I think, to an extent, the whole British Army relies on psychological health and well-being, and knowing how to get the best out of yourself, trusting yourself, knowing what your strengths are, knowing what your weaknesses are, and operating as part of a team, and absolutely being able to rely on the people around you, so that that they will look out for you. And that camaraderie, that mateship, if you like, is incredibly important in the military, and so you never felt you were alone. That sense of loyalty to your cap badge is a thread that runs back hundreds of years into the past and actually into the future, and connects you to everybody else. And that, actually thinking about it, that is that sort of psychological reserves, if you like, or that psychological well-being, without it ever being articulated as such.